Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Monday Moonlit Circle Connection. If you're new here, I'm Gwendie Belle Moone, author, storyteller, celestial traveler, and a woman who's lived enough lives to fill a 7-book series titled Look at the Moon. As a reminder, our Monday Circle is where we slow down, take a deep breath, and really remind ourselves that healing isn't a finish line, it's a rhythm, it's the pulse. So, tonight we're going to talk about becoming. We're going to talk about the psychological truth of shedding some old skins and setting new boundaries, reclaiming your identity, and creating meaning in the most ordinary, sacred little corners of your life. So, tonight I want to talk about something many of us quietly wrestle with: becoming the person you know you're meant to be while still dragging around the ghost of who you used to be. You're not stuck. You're just carrying an outdated version of yourself who hasn't realized that they're allowed to put down their burdens. The old you can give yourself permission to put down those burdens. So, tonight, let's make some space for becoming and let's do some healing. This week's behind the scene look at Look at the Moon is really along the same lines. I've been drafting scenes about old emotional patterns, what it means when your childhood self is still steering the wheel in your current day life. So, with this first book in the Look at the Moon series titled The Final Silence, I've been deep into the emotional archaeology of childhood wounds, the kind of digging that brings up both truth and tenderness. One of the biggest themes I keep running into is, the person that you want to be already exists. They're buried under old wounds that you haven't resolved yet. That keeps, coming through really loud and clear for me in writing this first book. In this first book, teenage Gwendie believes that she has to earn love. And present day Gwendie knows that she has to unlearn that belief, because you don't have to earn love. This is where boundary setting starts in, not with others, but with the stories that you've carried around about yourself. Start there. Stories that you never personally wrote, you just memorized as fact. And here's the thing: you don't realize how much the old self really clutches the reins until life starts changing. And then you notice. You notice in those moments where life requires you to improve or grow or expand or see another point of view. What your nervous system is saying to you is danger. We don't do new things. Back to survival mode. Get back into your comfort zone. That's what your brain is always trying to trick you into doing. And that's what I'd like to tackle tonight. That's why the work isn't just about becoming someone new. It's giving your old self permission to stop guarding a life that no longer needs protection. You have to name that feeling before you can control it, before you can affect it and influence it. That's what I'm writing through this week and what I wanted to share with you. There's a moment in this girl's life where she realizes she's outgrown the story that was written for her, and she has to let go of that before she can move forward with her new story. So, that urge to crawl back to comfort, even though we know it's not best for us, that brings me into my branding and marketing journey for this week. I want to address how I personally mitigate self sabotage. Something I'm sure anyone who lands in this circle can relate to. We talk a lot about the lover archetype here. You know, desire, meaning, devotion, beauty. It's our love language. But you know, devotion without awareness, without some self reflection, that's where self sabotage slides in, looking all warm and cozy and inviting, because it urges us to go back to those moments of comfort and safety where we knew something was maybe not best for us, but it was working and it was safe. You know, we could actually call this what it is. It's your lizard brain reacting to change. It's that ancient survival centered part of you that really whispers, don't move, don't evolve, don't risk being seen, or you could get eaten. So, you know, change frightens really that primitive part of us because change implies uncertainty. And uncertainty, once upon a time, meant danger. It meant the difference between life and death. That's why people who are, you know, deeply overdue for a breakthrough often start self sabotaging right before something good arrives. I know you've all seen it, you've probably seen it in yourselves. It's easier to recognize in other people, though, so you could probably think of an event with a friend. Not so easy to recognize in yourself, but that's what we're here to really uncover, to really expose ourselves in these moments where our brains are working against us, and we just have to tell them it's okay. You know, not because you're weak, you know, not because you let outside influences affect you, but because your nervous system hasn't been taught how to feel safe with growth, and you have to be the one to take the reins and teach it that it's okay, change is okay, and the uncertainty is going to be okay. So, tonight's branding lesson, I was going to share with you guys a little tidbit that I've taken on for a self motto is that your life is your brand, and ritual is what brings you your rebranding. If you're ready to rebrand who you are, listen up, because every small little act of meaning teaches your nervous system, you know, hey, we're allowed to have nice things now. Hey, we can calm down now. Hey, this isn't going to be so bad. Every time you bring a little bit of ceremony into your life, a little bit of meaningness and intention into your everyday moments, it's a reminder from the lover archetype, which is, of course, our guiding star here, that the lover doesn't change by force, and the lover actually transforms by devotion. So devote to yourself, devote a sacred sense of calm for yourself, that the changes that you're looking for aren't scary. Relax, take a deep breath, and look at these changes that you're looking forward to as an evolvement of who you are, not something that pulls you from the safety of your day-to-day life. So, you know, everything that I've been doing here with Gwendieverse branding is along those lines. The motifs in my stories, the softness in the pictures that I create, the moonlight, you know, the soil, the seeds, the key, the coin. It all comes back to one truth. You don't become your highest self by conquering who you were. It's part of you. You're not going to get rid of that. You become her by loving yourself into alignment, step by step, and breath by breath, and one ritual at a time. So tonight's episode really leans heavily into that identity work and into looking at your shadow self and recognizing when you're acting from healed intention versus worried attachment. So buckle up, moonbeams. Let's get into it. We love to talk about love here in the Gwendieverse. Real love, messy love, transformational kind of love. So let's talk about boundaries because, moon babies, boundaries are love. They're not punishment, they're not rejection, they're not cruelty, they are love. And not just love for others. Boundaries are really an ultimate form of self love and self care. And boundaries actually protect your own personal dignity, they protect your nervous system, your future self, and your peace. But here's the psychology. If you weren't given boundaries growing up, setting them as an adult feels like you're becoming the villain. And it can be a very unpleasant experience, especially if you get any level of pushback. You can feel like you're being too harsh, you're being the wrong type of way in a situation. Maybe you're being too argumentative, and you bring that back onto yourself in most cases. That fear that you're becoming the villain, that's really where people stay small, and they allow for people to trample all over them because they don't want to come off as the bad guy. But here's how we shift that. Because, again, I cannot stress this enough. Being able to set boundaries in your own life, in your own world, is the ultimate self love and self care. This is something that if you're not good at it, if it doesn't feel appropriate, you need to practice, practice, practice. So here's what I'm going to give you a little psychology tip here. Please, just a reminder, I am not a psychological certified professional, so please keep that in mind. This is just based on my own personal experiences and what has worked for me over the years. And I just wanted to share this. I heard a lyric the other day. It was a song that Baby Nova was singing here on Facebook, that really, no, I think it was on YouTube, that really stopped me in my tracks. And I'm not 100% if it was her own lyrics or if she was singing someone else's song, but I did link her down below in the description if you're interested in following up with her. She is a wonderful up-and-coming indie artist. But the lyrics were this: I worship the myth I made out of you. And I heard that and just played it over and over again. I was like, wow, that really hits. And it falls right into this topic of setting boundaries, and finding it difficult to do so because, most people don't fall in love with another person. This is most of us. Most people do not fall in love with another person. They fall in love with their interpretation, their own personal interpretation of that person. You as a human being, this is just natural inclination. You fill in all the gaps, all the things that are unknown with your own hopes and dreams and imagination about what this person means to you. You decorate their potential with your own lust and blind affection. And, you might even be projecting your own healing journey and your own solid sense of self onto someone who hasn't healed a single thing in their own life, who hasn't addressed a single issue. You could be projecting that onto them, and that's not where it's at. That's not where you find your forever partner. So this week's lesson in love is pretty simple on this theme. When we're attracted to the myth of somebody, we stop seeing the human being that they actually are underneath. We stop seeing the truth. And, we need to see people as they are and not as our loneliness wants them to be. And that shift alone can save a lot of people years of heartache. It's simple, and grandmas around the world have been preaching it since the beginning of time, and us young ones don't listen. And so here I am repeating that cycle. And I know that a lot of people need to experience this for themselves before they truly see. But I just want to say it out loud because it is quite the eye opener once you grasp it. That, see people for who they are, not for who your loneliness wants them to be. And here's a little bit of a psychological anchor in that is, that people are not who you want them to be. Just because you want somebody to be a particular person doesn't mean that's going to happen. You can wish in one hand and the rest. People are who they are, and people are always going to eventually show you who they are. That brings us to, what about when they're really putting their best foot forward? Your freedom in relationships and in finding a lifetime partner really begins the moment you stop editing someone else's behavior into a better story. Stop editing other people in your life. Edit yourself. Work on you. But something to remember is that honeymoon period. But it always ends. The honeymoon period cannot be infinite by its very nature. It is a spurt of time in a moment. It is always fleeting. But there's a little bit of science behind. It's not exact, but there is a little bit of science behind how long does that honeymoon period last. When should you maybe take stock of a relationship if you're on the fence? Well, chances are you really should, once that honeymoon phase starts to fizzle out. And research in interpersonal psychology actually shows that when people first meet, of course we're going to put our best foot forward. Of course we're going to curate our lives, and we're going to compensate for any deficiencies, and we're going to mask our vulnerabilities. That's human nature. So everybody up front is going to be the best version of themselves if they're trying to impress you. So the honeymoon phase can last between 2 to 12 weeks because life happens in that amount of time. You can't stop life from happening. And when life happens, it can really ruin a disillusion. Stress increases over time. Familiarity with somebody increases over time. And you get to know who they really are, not just the versions of themselves that they're curating for you. Expectations increase over time. I mean, you have different expectations of someone you're dating from the second date to maybe 4 months in. Totally different expectations once you're 4 months in. So you have to understand that that's an added stressor on a relationship. Real life responsibilities start showing up. Doctor's appointments, somebody's sick, I need to go run errands and I can't spend time with you. Other things start invading into that space, just day-to-day stuff. And then, the energy that's required to maintain a performance, it eventually drops. We just don't have it in us to keep that up for our entire lives. I've heard some people say 3 months is about when you see a mask slip, but there's a little more that goes into it than that, because, early in relationships, we're getting those heavy shots of, the good feeling stuff, dopamine, oxytocin. We've got, our ideal image of a relationship and where this is going to go. It's planted firmly in our brains. So we've got those things going for us, and they're making us happy, and they're making us overlook certain flags. They're making us overlook certain certain incompatibilities. These brain chemicals really make us feel amazing, and they actually make people put their best foot forward. I mean, they make us feel good, and we show ourselves off in this phase. And as the brain slowly starts to return to baseline, which actually can be a little bit longer than even the initial honeymoon period. It can be 8 weeks to 18 months before your brain actually goes back to normal baselines of dopamine and oxytocin. But when that does happen, old patterns start to reemerge with people who were maybe putting up a front or not completely exposing their entire character. And that's when we see the mask slip. So, and that can be different for different kinds of people and how they handle stressors in their life. That can be 2 to 3 months for really high anxiety or impulsive people. It can be closer to 6 months for people who have avoidant relationship styles, because if there's one thing they're good at, it's avoiding. Or people who are a bit more controlling personalities, could be a little bit longer for them. It could be even longer for people with intense idealization phases. People who have maybe bipolar disorder, histrionic traits, or trauma-driven attachment patterns. It could be even longer before you see a clear pattern of behavior in somebody like that. And again, not exact science. It's not guaranteed. These are just some common, window timelines for particular kinds of people. And, a potential partner's mask doesn't slip really based on a specific calendar date arriving. What it is it starts to slip when the illusion can't really hold up under honesty anymore. And, when the relationship moves from wanting to be chosen to wanting to be known. So the chase has happened. You've been caught. And what now? You want somebody to know who you are. And, proximity to that person starts to reveal patterns. And it's up to you to see those patterns. And if you're so caught up in the whimsy of the story that you've created in your head that you're not seeing patterns, then you could be doing yourself a disservice. Now, am I saying walk into every relationship looking for the patterns? Absolutely not. But if you find yourself a few months into a relationship and you go, where am I going? What am I doing here? Maybe it's time to take stock post-honeymoon phase. That's all I'm saying, because sometimes when your needs are no longer matching your potential partner's performance, or when the version of them that you worshipped in your head is actually crashing into the version of them that they've been all along, and you're just now starting to realize it, it is time to evaluate a relationship for what it is behind the veil. So let's actually turn the tide a little bit and talk about something positive. I heard a really lovely story this week, and I wanted to lighten the energy because we are talking about some pretty heavy topics here. There is this woman somewhere in the U.S. I couldn't possibly tell you where. Her name is Debbie Bolton, and she recently very quietly paid for a stranger's child to get on a flight. She didn't do it to go viral. She didn't do it to get credit with the airline. She did it because she was standing behind a situation, and she happened to have the means and the capability to correct the situation and really make somebody's absolute day. And she did that, and her heart moved faster than her ego. She stepped forward. This father didn't realize that he needed to pay for a separate ticket because of the age of his child. He thought she was young enough to just ride for free on his lap. And he didn't have the money to get her on the flight. Now, whatever this flight was doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. But the issue was he couldn't pay for an extra ticket right then and there to get that baby on the flight. And she just said, "Pardon me, I'd like to pay for that. Thank you. No, I don't want to give you my name." Well, the internet found her anyway. She had actively declined fanfare in the moment, but the world found her, and she's actually a very successful businesswoman, very well-to-do, successful businesswoman, and she's out there paying it forward. She's not asking to be in the spotlight. She offered kindness freely, without a receipt, without an audience, and I wanted to share that with everyone. I thought we could all do with a little shot of hopium in today's confusing climate of chaos. And may we all lead that kind of quiet goodness in our lives. You know, this is just the kind of ripple that changes the world. So thank you, Debbie Bolton, just for being you. And yeah, just wanted to share that with you guys. So hopefully you've seen something about that. I think it's a great story out there. But we do have to visit the dark side of the moon. Okay. All right, Moon Circle. Let's dim the lights down a little bit, because we've got to go to the shadow side for a moment. And, you know, we need to talk about the Justin Baldoni situation. But I'm going to try and do this in a way that's not slinging gossip. I want to do something different. I want to look at this on a deeper level. I want us to think about how power gets used like a weapon when egos are left unchecked. I'll keep this segment as respectful but honest as I can. I have some serious opinions, but at the same time, I think this is just a symptom of something deeper. And, you know, reports are surfacing about mistreatment and professional sabotage and, you know, silence from people who should know better. But this isn't just celebrity drama. People with influence can create narratives that overshadow truth. People without power often become collateral damage to that. And audiences, we get swept up in the celebrity worship, forgetting that human beings are still human beings. This lawsuit, this It Ends With Us lawsuit, all of it, every aspect of it is a case study in low frequency behavior, mob mentality, bribing on whatever level, psychological, you know, dangling, shining things in front of people to get them to change loyalties. The danger of prioritizing image over integrity. These are the highlights of this case. Trauma responses disguised as power. And how quickly people will trade ethics for access. My moon babies, I just want to remind everyone that fame is not character. SEO manipulation is not proof. Silence is not innocence. And cruelty wrapped in glitter and hair perfume is still cruelty. Here's what I will say, safely and clearly. The dark side of the moon is where unexamined power grows teeth. Again, I have a lot of opinions about this, but I can't continue to reflect on the absolute evilness of this case. So this is your reminder. Don't idolize celebrities. You don't really know who they are. You never will. Behind closed doors, some of them aren't what you imagine. Don't excuse cruelty because it comes with a famous smile or a joke. Don't confuse charisma and influence with actual human character. And don't let parasocial loyalty make you betray your own moral compass. Use the dark side of the moon as a mirror. Take a good, hard look at what you are contributing. This is not a hiding place. This is a place for exposure. So, let this be our reminder. You don't need a platform to stand for truth. You just need a spine, a conscience, and a voice. That's all I'm going to say about that. So, this Sunday, we actually featured Saturn on the Sunday sky map. She's giving us some introspection and some cycles and some discipline and some sacred boundaries, which ties in very well with what we're doing this week. And it's, a perfect companion to tonight's theme. Saturn is visible in the western to the southwest sky after sunset. You can see it Sunday night and Monday night. And her rings, they're tipped nearly on the edge. They are very quiet and subtle and reserved. And if you're looking at them from here on Earth, they look nice and tidy, but they are anything but. They're like a woman who knows her worth and doesn't need to shout about it. A woman who knows that she holds mysteries and surprises and doesn't have to flash it to the world. So this week also brings a little bit of a sunset conjunction for Monday night. The moon and Saturn are appearing close together. They have been for a couple of nights, and you can catch it again tonight. It's a soft, breathtaking pairing. So if you guys can get out there and see that, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen all the time, so it is a nice little pairing when you can get the moon sitting next to the big gas giants. Saturn's themes, again, are boundaries, of course, endings and beginnings, karma, watch out Hollywood, time, responsibility, and the slow sacred work of becoming. So it really fits in for this week's themes. And so when you do see the moon and Saturn side by side later tonight, you could whisper a quiet message to yourself. You could say, release what's done, honor what's real, and step into your next chapter with intention. And don't forget that you can also explore the full map on Sunday's post on your Facebook Moonlit Circle. And I did want to also go over another core teaching tonight with you guys. This is having to do with, my main motto, which is that, ceremony and ritual will always bring meaning into your life. And how can we make that a teachable moment? So what I wanted to address was, you can't become who you're meant to be while clinging to who you were. So before we go into a little closing ceremony, let's take a look at the psychology of that statement. You can't become who you're meant to be while clinging to who you were. So what does that mean? What's the psychology behind that? And, there's a couple of things. There's actually 5 things about that I would like to share with you. First is your brain fears change. We've already kind of tackled that, in that, even good change, your brain is like, no thanks. No, I'm good. We're good over here. You could be in a pit of lava that you've sat in for a month, and your brain will say, we know this pit of lava. We understand this pit of lava. Whatever's on the outside of this pit of lava, we don't get. We don't understand, and we don't know. Could be worse than a pit of lava, so we don't want that. So you have to keep in mind that lizard brain response of yours. You're hardwired for that level of survival. You're hardwired to sit in a pool of lava because it is a known danger as opposed to the unknown danger outside. Keep that always in the back of your mind. That is how your brain is working against you on a pretty regular basis. It doesn't care about joy. It doesn't care about safety. Safety actually to your brain just equals familiarity. As long as you know what it is, it's safe. So when you grow, your brain goes wrong direction, return to old patterns. And this is where self-sabotage comes in. So the second thing that I want you to know is that setting boundaries, thinking about boundaries, contemplating talking to someone about boundaries, it triggers identity fear. Your brain sees that as a change, and especially if you've always been a people pleaser, especially if you've always walked on eggshells through your whole childhood, making sure that you're saying the right thing, making sure that you're doing the right thing. If you've got that nervous personality and you all of a sudden, somewhere in your 20s or 30s go, I'm going to set a boundary, your brain is going to say, not on my watch. So you've got to know that you're swimming upstream when you're doing this, and your own brain is going to be working against you while you're trying to set these boundaries and implement them. And as long as you understand that and tell yourself, I knew this was going to happen, I knew I was going to work against myself, you can get through this, and you can effectively start learning how to set boundaries for yourself. So as long as you know setting boundaries is going to trigger an identity fear, it's going to trigger your brain to go, whoa, this is a change. I don't like this. If I stay small, I stay safe. Except smallness isn't safety, it's suffocation. So we've got to work past that level. The next thing that I need you to know is that you are not responsible for anyone else's growth. This is where a lot of us, especially those empaths, get hung up, is that you start working on yourself and you start working on other people. You've really got to focus on yourself. It feels selfish. It does at first, especially if you're a people pleaser. But you can set a boundary. Try it out. Set one boundary. Think about what you're going to set and set it tomorrow. Don't wait. You can't control how someone else is going to respond to that. And their response to you setting a boundary is not your problem. That's emotional adulthood. That person's emotions is their problem. Your emotion of wanting to set a boundary, of being proud that you've set a boundary for yourself, you have to figure out how to be happy with that. You have to figure out how to tell yourself it's okay that you set a boundary. It's not as scary as it feels. It's not that big of a change. You're doing this for your own good. You're doing this for your future self. You have to really convince yourself, especially if this is the first time you've ever set a boundary. And I think that, for those of you who are comfortable setting boundaries, not everyone is. And I just want to share that I know I have met people who are comfortable setting boundaries, and they kind of don't grasp what the big deal is. And just really to share with someone who has no trouble setting a boundary, it's really quite suffocating to try and set a boundary. Like, you really feel like you are starting World War III if you were to say, you know, I've already committed myself to this Boy Scout meet, so I'm not able to make cupcakes for this bake-off sale. That statement alone for some people is a death sentence. And learning how to set even the simplest boundary like that can be absolutely identity crisis, DEFCON 1 for that person. So I just want to set some people in the right frame of mind on boundaries and how difficult they are for some people. So we know now that in order to set a boundary for someone who it's difficult to set a boundary for, we have to understand that, one, our brain fears change, and we're going to have to swim upstream for that. And that just thinking about setting a boundary can trigger identity fear, and that you are not responsible for how other people respond to you setting a boundary. So the next thing that I want you to know is that seeing people clearly is a form of healing. This goes back to the worshiping the myth. This goes back to the honeymoon phase and making sure that you're hearing people when they tell you who they are. Stop projecting what your loneliness is looking for onto people. So, you recover your power in being able to see people for who they are when you stop looking through that veil. And finally, freedom begins with permission. You have to give yourself permission to do this. You have to give yourself permission to evolve, to let go, and to say, that chapter is closed. We're not going back. So I just want you guys to understand that, as we open our hearts and our minds to give ourselves permission for growth, what then? So what comes next? Because that's just the first part. You just have to give yourself permission to say, I can set boundaries. Okay, so now what? Well, you know what I say all the time, mundane, everyday life becomes sacred and meaningful when you do it with some ritual, some ceremony, and some intention. So once you've cleared the path for setting a boundary, be intentional. That's the key. Humans were wired for ritual, and not because we're dramatic, although we are, and I might be, on top tier, top 10% anyway, but because ritual tells the brain, this moment matters. Your brain wakes up and goes, oh, this is something with steps. This is something that has a start, a middle, an ending. This is something that has meaning to it. I should pay attention. It creates psychological bookends for beginnings and endings so that your nervous system can understand what's happening and absorb the information in a meaningful way. When you light a candle before journaling, you say to your brain, oh, we're entering a meaningful moment now. What I write down in my journal matters. When you whisper with intention into your tea, your psyche hears, oh, we're choosing a direction now, and it wakes up and listens. So this week, I want you guys to do something tiny, some tiny little ceremonial ritual. Stir your coffee clockwise for intention. What intention? That's entirely up to you. You set the tone. You set the course of your own ship. Open your blinds like you're opening a new chapter for the day. Fold your laundry, telling yourself that you're taking care of the future version of you that you know is going to be tired and deserves this level of care. Ritual is not a performance. It's presence in the moment. And that's something the sages and seekers of wisdom have been preaching since the beginning of time. Be in the moment with purpose. So try that with me. Let me know how it goes. I'm very interested. I'll see if I can do a little ceremony tonight and give you guys a little feedback on how it went. So, tonight, we could stay on theme and you guys could journal about, where am I holding on to an old version of myself and who am I becoming instead? Or you could go down the path of where am I still worshiping the myth of somebody instead of seeing the truth? Take that one lightly. I don't want to be the cause of opening up any cans in relationships, but yeah, it's definitely something that you should ask yourself once you've moved past a honeymoon phase and you feel like you need to reevaluate a relationship. It's really good to take stock at that point. And finally, I want to throw out a little moment of compassion for some loved ones. Someone in my extended family circle suffered a devastating loss this week, and I wanted to offer a gentle prayer for every person carrying just unspeakable grief tonight. May peace find you. May breath return to your body. May you be held through the unholdable. And may your heart find rest when it's ready. And I am so sorry for your loss. I love you all. Until next time, my Moonlit Circle, be gentle with yourselves. You're becoming with me. And you are allowed to grow. And you are allowed to set boundaries. Set those boundaries. Do that for you. Thank you for being here. You make this space glow, and I'm so proud of our little community. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay a part of this glowing little corner of the internet. And remember, everyone, keep dreaming, keep wandering, and keep glowing. This is Gwendie signing off. Bye, everyone.